it's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options. Welcome to the big show. I am Ryan Kennedy, joined by Michael Traikos and Drew Shore, and we've got a lot of hockey action to talk about today. We're going to start on the West Coast with the Vancouver Canucks, who have been struggling, but goaltender Thatcher Demko is set to make his return on Thursday after a 12-game absence due to a lower body injury. Stop me if you've heard that before. But Demko is back. So, Mike, I put it to you. What kind of expectations should Canucks fans have for Thatcher Demko once he returns to the crease?
Well, let's start it off with Vancouver desperately needed him back, Ryan. Like, no team has given up more goals this season than the Vancouver Canucks. And, a lot of that is, probably on, their five-man group in front of the goaltender. But when you've got a Thatcher Demko back there, you hope that he's going to clean up some of the messes. And I say hopefully because I don't know if I don't know if we think Thatcher Demko is the savior, like he's the number one goalie like a Connor Hellebuyck is. Because I look at his stats and, sure, the 23-24 season, he was so good where he put himself on everyone's list for like, okay, in the next Olympics, this guy's going to be the goalie. But last year he struggled. Obviously, there was the health concerns. 22-23, he kind of struggled. And even this year, like 5-4-0 with a, basically a .903 save percentage, you can only expect so much out of him. So, obviously Vancouver needed him back, but I don't know how much we can expect that he's going to just turn things around for the Canucks.
And Drew, I know folks on social media were talking about the Vancouver loss to Detroit and how Kevin Lankinen was kind of left on an island in terms of the players in front of him. There wasn't a lot of team defense going on there. Do you think Demko can be a difference maker, or is this a matter of the Canucks just being a porous defensive team right now?
I mean, I think he's going to help. But I just think the way that they're playing, I don't think it's going to be enough where all of a sudden they're going to start magically winning games. Seems like every day that goes by there is just a day we're getting closer to the inevitable fire sale. So I think he'll be a nice addition for them to have back. He's obviously battled a lot of injuries over the last couple of years. So you hope he comes in and starts feeling good. But I don't think it's going to be enough to have a magical turnaround.
Okay. We'll stick with goaltenders, but on the positive side, the Toronto Maple Leafs have gotten two stellar performances from Dennis Hildeby, the Hildebeest, since Joseph Woll went down against the Florida Panthers. This was crucial because the Leafs, obviously Anthony Stolar's already out. Toronto's had so many injuries, and they've had inconsistency in net because of those injuries, which is to say, Joseph Woll was out with a personal matter early. Now Stolarz is out. Now Woll is hurt. Hildeby gets a 29 save shutout against the Lightning, then a 34 save performance in a shootout loss to the Montreal Canadiens Saturday night. The Leafs are back in the playoff hunt because anybody, it seems, can lead the Atlantic Division for a few days and then be a wild card team or worse. That just seems to be how it is this year. Drew, will go to you first on this one. Can Hildeby help the Leafs stay afloat until one of their two usual starters gets back?
Yeah, I think he can. And sometimes for a 5 to 10 game stretch, if he comes in, the guys are going to really rally around him, which they look like they're clearly doing. And I think he is capable. And the Leafs can't afford a 5 or 10 game bad stretch with where they are in the standings right now. So I think it's been an amazing bump to their team. And I mean, cool story. And hopefully he can keep it rolling.
Yeah, Mike, we have seen this numerous times where a new goaltender will come in and the league just doesn't really have a book on him. You think, Artur Shilos did it last year. Andrew Hammond was probably one of the most famous of all time when he went on that wild run with Ottawa. So what do you think about Hildeby? He obviously has NHL size. He's a tall drink of water. But can he kind of bridge the gap for the Leafs during this key stretch?
I actually do think so. And I think the Leafs have another goaltender that, you could kind of pencil in and say, all right, maybe the future looks like a Joseph Wall, Dennis Hildeby tandem, maybe next season. I think it gives the Leafs a lot of options. And you're right, 6'7" goaltenders, are pretty rare to find. And Dennis Hildeby looks solid. 4th round pick. So it's not like he came out of nowhere. I think the Leafs are going to have fun discussions on their hand. Like, people say the 3-headed monster in a negative way. I think with the Leafs, if they've got a situation where you're trying to find Hildeby, Stolars, and Wall all playing time, well, you just have to look around the league, Ryan, and go, okay, how many teams would love to have one of these 3 goalies? And, maybe you hang on to Hildeby, maybe you hang on to Wall, and you say, Anthony Stolars just signed a great extension. And, would a Winnipeg who's struggling to find a backup for Connor Hellebuck be interested? Would an Edmonton be interested? Heck, would Montreal, which just called up Fowler from the minors because, Dovich and Montembeault have just been awful. Would they be interested? And there's probably other teams, not just Canadian teams, that are interested in goalies. So, the Leafs, if they could keep, if Hildeby keeps rising and proving that he can be a starter or at least a competent guy that you could throw in a tandem, like I said, come trade deadline, this could be a great bonus for the Leafs.
Leafs have San Jose next, the Macklin Celebrini show. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep the young guns like Celebrini and Will Smith off the board there. And real quick, interesting story. I remember the year that Hildeby was drafted, he had actually been, if I'm not mistaken, he'd been passed over before. Okay. And draft was in Montreal, and I was treating some Swedes to some poutine the night before, and one of them was like, who I wonder will get drafted? There's a goalie named Dennis Hildeby. He's like 6'7". He's really come on. I'm like, oh, interesting. And sure enough, on day 2 of the draft, the Leafs picked him up, and I saw that Swede. I'm like, good call, my friend. So there you go. We're gonna stick. This is a big net minding day. We talked about Vancouver. Yeah, it's the goalie issue. We talked about Vancouver losing to Detroit. Part of the reason they lost to Detroit was John Gibson, the cagey vet with the Red Wings, got his 25th career shutout and the 5th time shutting out Vancouver. Obviously, he had played with Anaheim for years prior, where he saw the Canucks more. With that win, the Red Wings went into first place in the Atlantic Division. Like I say, anything can happen in the Atlantic Division. So here's the question. Mike, I'll go to you first on this one. Let's assume Detroit makes the playoffs, and everything's really tight right now, so who knows? But if they make the playoffs, can they win a round this season? They haven't been to the playoffs in more than a decade, but can they win a round based on how they look to you right now?
Ooh, it's tough because, say if they win the division, Ryan, they're going to play a wild card team. And a wildcard team could very well be the Florida Panthers. So it's all dependent on who they play, but sure. And I love the fact that the standings are so bunched up right now. I think, this is, like I've said before, this is Gary Bettman's dream, is to have competitive hockey, from the first month of the season to the last month of the season, where every team is in it. No team is really out of it unless you're the Nashville Predators, and then you're out of it. But really, you look up and down, and, the Leafs were the worst team in the conference, and now they're like a couple points out of a playoff spot, and Tampa Bay has gone up and down. I talked to John Cooper about this the other night, and, he was basically saying no one is playing well. For whatever reason, no one has been able to find that consistency where you can just, unless you're the Colorado Avalanche or maybe the Dallas Stars, every other has been all right, 4 games, we're on a 4-game winning streak. Okay, now we're on a 5-game losing streak. And, Detroit has been that team as well. I think they're a playoff team this year. I think they're good enough to win a couple rounds. They have a roster that's young, but that's also got some experience. And like you mentioned, when you've got a goaltending duo of Gibson and Talbot, I think that, that was maybe the missing puzzle piece for the Red Wings.
Yeah, I do wonder too, even though like a Dylan Larkin has almost no playoff experience. If I'm not mistaken, he did play one series before the streak began. I think he might have even been a rookie with the Red Wings. But you do have Patrick Kane, who has won multiple cups. You do have Alex DeBrincat, who's been there before. So I wonder how some of those guys will help out in the room if and when they get there. Drew, I'll put it to you. When you look at this Red Wings team, do you see a unit that can make some noise? They do also have cap space, I will point out. They are one of the teams. I think there's only San Jose and Chicago are the only two teams that have spent less on the cap this year. So the Red Wings are actually one of those teams where if they wanted to add a big name at the deadline, they actually could do it, even with the new playoff salary cap. So, Drew, how you feel in the Red Wings right now?
Yeah, I mean, they're playing really well. I think that I thought John Gibson was going to have a Cam Fowler-like resurgence right from the start. When he got to Detroit, he personally got up to a little bit of a slow start, I would say, for his standards, but is finding his game now. And like Michael said, I think it's all going to depend on who they match up against. And with the standings so tight, kind of like last year, how Colorado faced Dallas, I think in the second round, they could easily face a team who could win the cup, who's coming in as a wild card. And it's interesting to see. I think the deadline is going to be pretty boring this year, just because like all the teams are so tight that like there's not very many teams who are going to be willing to sell. And I mean, I think that the smarter GMs are going to try and get out in front of that and make moves early, just because if there's not many teams willing to sell at the deadline, it's going to be tough to add. And an interesting point I was thinking about is I think the condensed schedule, going back to what you said, John Cooper said, has really played a role in this. It seems like a lot of these teams are so tired night in and night out simply because I mean, they're playing so much hockey that it almost like feels like a playoff series where they're all going 7 games. So as a result of the 7 games, you're kind of 4-3 or 3-4 through the 7 games. And it's just kind of like chopped its way through the middle of the season.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I was going to ask Drew, I mean, you played in the NHL. You also played in the AHL, which can have those 3-3s. And obviously the NHL, they don't do 3 games in 3 days. But, you know, for a professional athlete, what is the difference between having, say, 2 days off between a game and only 1 day off?
I think it's a big difference. And like I said, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I think it almost makes the teams closer in ability because everyone is tired, if that makes sense. I think if you're giving the Colorado Avalanche 2-3 days of rest, I mean, they're rolling everyone as it is now. But I think the extra rest provides more opportunity for the better teams to be fresh. And I think when you're playing every other night, it almost makes everything a little more gray and murky. So I think that's one of the reasons that the standings are so tight this year. And it'll be interesting to see how the deadline unfolds as a result of that. Because like you guys said, I can't remember a year where 25, 30 games into the season, you could go on a 4-win streak and be first in your division or be out of the playoffs and be dead last.
Totally.
I think the other thing, Ryan and Drew, is the injuries. And I know we're going to be talking about, you know, another player that is injured. And we just talked about Demko coming back from an injury, but you know, go down the standings. Like, is Colorado like the only team that hasn't? Well, they had Mackenzie Blackwood out. I shouldn't say they haven't had any significant injuries, but like every team has had like some massive injuries. Whether it's like, you know, Florida with no Barkov, no Tkachuk. You know, Ottawa's missed Brady Tkachuk for a big chunk of the start. You know, Ryan, we were talking about you're quizzing us on who the Tampa Bay defense was the other night, and we couldn't even name any players outside of like Darren Radish. So, you know, that's got to play into it. The fact that so many key players have been out this year.
Yeah. And some of those were in the playoffs, and you know, some of them have just been having it. And again, Drew, I mean, the condensed schedule, I have to imagine that doesn't help.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing so many guys on so many different teams get hurt. And I think that that's one of the craziest things about what the Dallas Stars are doing. I mean, you look at how many man games they've lost, especially with key players from Duchesne to Ben to Harley to now Sagan. And that'll be interesting too from a cap perspective on what they do in Dallas, because Sagan obviously makes a pretty decent amount of money, and it doesn't sound very good for him. Like he's going to be coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get to the latest big injury. Not that we revel in this sort of thing, but Evgeni Malkin listed week to week with an upper body injury for the Penguins. Missed last night's game for the Ducks, missed the previous game. So Malkin, I'll admit, he has played way better than I thought he would this season. Looking at how he looked last year, I was like, he might be done. And then he got off to a tremendous start. Mike, I'll start with you. Without Malkin in the lineup, can the Penguins stay afloat in the playoff race? And keep in mind, right now, the Metro has both wild card teams in the East. Yeah. So we talked about how packed the Atlantic is, but right now, the Metro's very tough.
Yeah, it's going to be real difficult for Pittsburgh to hang around without Malkin. I don't think they have the depth, Ryan. They're already missing Ricard Raquel, so that's two big offensive names out of your lineup. And as great as Sidney Crosby has been, the guy can only do so much. So they're going to need a lot of contributions, further contributions from Brian Rust, who's having a under the radar really good season, as well as Anthony Mantha is going to need to do a little bit more. You're going to ask Thomas Novak to do more. I don't know how much you can ask of Thomas Novak. Like, I don't know what the expectations are for him, but really it's the young guys. They called up Rutger McGroarty again. And this is really the opportunity I think that Rutger McGroarty needs, along with Ben Kendall, who's, not going to be going to the World Juniors. You got two young guys there where there's, there's an opportunity. And, can you be the next Malkin? Again, that's a lot to ask, but, that's what it's going to have to take, I think.
Yeah, so Rutger McGroarty, Samuel Poulin gets another crack at it as well. Drew, your thoughts on Pittsburgh? Can they survive without Malkin, assuming that he is out at least a couple of weeks?
I think it just depends on how long he's out. I mean, if this is a month to 2 months, I would say probably not. I think that young guys, especially their players, can come in and probably do a good enough job for a couple weeks to get the job done. And I think in an extended period of time, they're going to be in big trouble. I actually played with Tommy Novak, who's a hilarious person in general. But it's funny now, and like he's a good player, but now you look at the Penguins lineup and he's like playing left wing with Sidney Crosby, I think the other night. So I don't think that that's necessarily a recipe for long-term success. But I mean, a funny Malkin quote that someone said to me years ago, which has always stuck with me, which I always thought was so fascinating because I've never heard anyone say this, is when they were at their best in a one-game stint, when everyone in the world is playing best. I remember someone saying this, like, there's no one in the world better than Evgeni Malkin. Like, over a 7-game series, Crosby's going to be a better player, of course. But, like, for one game, you could pick a player to play at his best. I don't know. The quote was Evgeni Malkin. I never really thought about it like that. And I thought it was kind of an interesting thing, just basically saying anyone in the NFL can dominate a game for a single game as much as Evgeni Malkin can. And I don't know. The quote has always kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, I remember covering Penguins Flyers in the playoffs, and you can imagine the fireworks in that series because those teams just hate each other. But Malkin was just a tour de force. Like, he was, I think that was the year maybe he won the MVP. And I remember one shift where it was deep in the offensive zone. Mike Richards for the Flyers just drilled Malkin into the boards. Malkin was slow to get up. And as he's circling back to get to the bench, the puck's loose in the neutral zone. He picks it up and then takes it all the way in and scores. And it was just like, holy crap. Like, even when you destroy this guy with a hit, he gets up and he's just like takes over. And, I'm kind of with you, Drew. Like, Malkin at his best was, you saw flashes of Mario Lemieux because he was a big guy. He had that crazy reach and he could take over a game, especially when Sidney Crosby was missing a ton of action back in those days.
Yeah.
Was that the series where that's when Giroux and Crosby fought? Right. I think they fought in like game 4. That was what I think to this day, like in the last 10 years, that might've been one of the best playoff series of all time.
It was amazing. And I think it was the same time when Doc Holliday for the Phillies was pitching his no-hitter gem. And I remember going there to cover a bit of Holliday for the baseball side, as well as the playoffs. So it was just, good time.
Absolute madness. We love it. Let's stick with black and gold, but on the positive side of the ledger, the Boston Bruins, not just surviving, but thriving in that Atlantic division, currently sitting second, but who knows what it'll be in 2 days. They might be first, they might be last, who knows. But let's talk about the Bruins off season. Victor Arvidsson, 13 points in 23 games. Sean Corrali, stalwart on the penalty kill. Alex Steeves has 8 points in 14 games. Tanner Jeannot and Mikey Isamont have 12 points each. So, Mike, I'll go to you first on this one. I know you believed in the Bruins before the season began. How are you feeling about those additions and what the Bruins have been able to accomplish so far?
Yeah, I believed in the Bruins because I thought Charlie McAvoy was going to be healthy and he was going to be a Norris Trophy candidate. I didn't expect him to be out of the lineup and the Bruins still winning games, Ryan. So
next man
kind
up.
of lucky that way. But yeah, it's been a weird season for the Bruins. I don't think anyone really saw, these additions because these weren't like off-season additions where you're going, oh yeah, the Bruins won free agency because they got Victor Arvidsson and Sean Corrali and Alex Steeves. Like these guys are playing out of their minds. And I'll name another guy too, Fraser Minton, who was acquired at the deadline last year. Let's just call him an off-season acquisition because he's been fantastic as well. 6 goals, 11 points this year. This is sort of what you used to talk about, Ryan, which is the culture of the Boston Bruins. You go into Boston and it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done before. It just seems like they transform you into that Bruin blueprint. And I think we're seeing it all over the place, even with this new gen.
Yeah. Come in, do the work. Drew, you were mentioning on social media the other day, talking about Morgan Geekie's development path and how every young player should study Morgan Geekie and how he got to where he is today. Because, I mean, frankly, Morgan Geekie has probably been the most pleasant surprise as one of the top goal scorers in the NHL this season. So how important is versatility? Or I should say, how important is Morgan Geekie's versatility since he joined the Bruins last season or 2 seasons ago?
So I think his versatility is really important when you look at his career path that's allowed him to get where he is. But I think if you look at the Boston Bruins lineup now, they need him to put the puck in the net, which he's doing every game. And I think that if you kind of look at their roster, it's almost like they got away from the typical Boston Bruins kind of hockey for 4 or 5 years. And now it looks like they're thrown back. I mean, you used to have to go in there and it was one of the hardest places to play in hockey. And now it's starting to become that again. The additions of Tanner Jeannot, these guys, even Zadorov. I mean, these guys are hard to play against. They're not necessarily the best players in the world, but they play really hard every single night. And if you look at they were at their best, they didn't have a ton of guys who had 100-point seasons. I mean, even Bergeron, Krejci, and these guys were just amazing two-way players who could kind of do it all. And so I think at this point in his career, the Boston Bruins need Morgan Geekie to put the puck in the net, which he's doing. But, I mean, it's a remarkable run. I think I saw something the other day, like calendar year, not hockey season, but like from the 2025 January 1 through December, I think he might have most goals in the NHL.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's weird because he's not like when you look at Nate McKinnon and how he scores goals, you're like, oh, yeah, of course that guy scores goals. Like, look at him skate and stuff. With Geekie, it's just like it's so elusive, like how he is able to score this much.
Well, McKinnon has the puck on his stick a lot more, right? Like I'm sure there's some stats on this that I don't have, but McKinnon has the puck like in his 45-second shift. McKinnon's probably average puck time is, I don't know, much, much higher than Morgan Geekie's. But in terms of their just ability to shoot the puck, I think Geekie's is good. And he's obviously very smart at getting into those spots and playing with some good players who can find him in those spots. And they're going in for him right now.
Yeah. And Drew, maybe you can just talk about, what you were mentioning on social media with Morgan Geekie, just his path and what he had to do to put himself in the position that he finds himself in today.
Yeah, I think what I alluded to there is, I mean, I think since he was 13 years old, his ability to shoot the puck was as good as anyone at the level he was playing now, clearly the NHL. But he was a guy who wouldn't have made the NHL had he just kind of kept thinking, I'm a goal scorer. I'm a goal scorer. I mean, you look at where he played in Carolina, where he played in Seattle. He can play center and wing, so he's super versatile, and that helps a lot of young players. I think a lot of young players who can only play one of those. Like, I was never comfortable playing in the wing, so there were so many times where I'd play on the wing in a game and just never feel good, never really feel comfortable. But if you look at in terms of just number of roster spots, it's like if you can play those, it opens up way more positions throughout the lineup that you can play in. So I think his ability to play both sides of the wing has helped him. And then he really didn't get his break until he was in Seattle. I can't remember who got hurt in their top 6 when they played the Colorado Avalanche, but that's when the Colorado Avalanche, I think, were the best team in the league. And I think he had 3 or 4 goals in a top 6 role in that playoff series. And I think that kind of opened his eyes. And it's crazy if people don't remember, but Seattle didn't even qualify him. And I can't remember what his qualifying offer would have been. I think it was 2.5 maybe, or 2.7. So just kept getting better, and then finally got put in a position to be a really offensive guy, and now is taking advantage of it.
And there you go. Be like Morgan Geeky, kids. Never give up.
Be like Geeky.
Be like Geeky. All right, let's talk a little bit of World Juniors here. Canada put out their training camp roster, and it is a slim one. They are not doing the big 40 player camp. They will most likely only cut 1 goalie, 1 defenseman, 1 forward, unless they get Sam Dickinson from the San Jose Sharks, in which case they would have to cut 2 defensemen. Mike, I'll go to you first on this one. How much pressure is on Team Canada to win the gold medal, given their disappointing last 2 tournaments where they were ejected in the quarterfinal both times by the Czechs?
I think there's a ton of pressure, and I think that's the reason why you bring in the Hunters. You know, if this team was cooking, then you don't probably have to go to the I don't want to say last resort option, but an
nuclear
option where you're
option.
going, you know, if we need to win, let's go to the most winningest organization in junior hockey, and let's get the 2 guys who orchestrated all that, which is Mark and Dale Hunter. And you know, I like what I heard from them. I know you were down there, so you heard it right from their mouth. But it sounds like they're going to practice. It sounds like they're going to take it real serious. You know, I think a lot of the criticism last year, aside from who wasn't getting playing time, was the lack of practice and preparation. I remember that from the 2016 tournament, I think it was, in Finland, where, you know, they had guys like Mitch Marner and Dylan Strome, and they didn't have to play in the exhibition games, and they were kind of coddled along the way. I don't think you're going to get that out of the Hunters. The big thing, I think, what I'm looking to see is, you know, can Canada play disciplined? And I think that's what really hurt them as well. You know, whether a hit is clean or not, and keep this in mind for the Olympics, because the IHF standard is so different, where you can hit a guy shoulder to chest, and it doesn't matter. You still might get called for a charging penalty or a roughing penalty, and that's just the way that the rules are going to go. So having a coach that makes sure that the players' emotions are in check, I think, is going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, and actually, you know, Dale Hunter mentioned that at the press conference, that when they had their summer camp, they really drilled it into the players that it's like, you have to follow the rules on the ice, because, you know, you don't want to get into penalty trouble. And yeah, I agree. I mean, I've covered so many World Juniors, and I kind of jokes that, you know, if the audience like reacts, it's a penalty. You know, it's like if there's a big cheer or a gasp, all of a sudden the arm goes up, and that's just how the officiating is. So you got to sort of know that level. And also, I think a very good point, Alan Miller, who is the GM of the team for Hockey Canada, was talking about they want guys that go to the inside. You know, they don't want perimeter players. They don't want guys who need time and space to make plays. That's not winning hockey for them. And I think that's a great point that people don't often think about when it comes to the World Juniors and really playoff hockey in general. But especially with the World Juniors, if you can't get to the center of the ice, you're not going to win. I found, you know, when Russia was in the tournament, they were excellent at keeping teams to the outside, and that's when they had a lot of success. And Drew, I'll put it to you, you know, in a tournament like this, a short tournament, you know, how important is it to really have a like team philosophy ready to go when you're bringing guys from all different teams? I know with Team USA, a lot of them had been NTDP kids in the past, but how important is it to establish early how a team is going to play?
I think it's probably the most important thing. I mean, I'm sure I saw some of the rumors that you guys saw last year, like, and I don't know if they're true or not, but I saw something after the tournament, like Canada didn't work on their power play. And like the hardest thing for these guys coming from different teams is, yes, you don't need to be practicing super hard. And I understand that the energy maintenance and all of that thing, but like one of the things that they should be nailing every single day is their systems, their power play, and their penalty kill. And like I said, I don't know if that was true that they actually didn't, but if that
they barely
like,
practiced.
If something like, like I said, I mean, they should, and I think USA practiced a lot more. I think that's the hardest thing when you get all these guys from different teams and different programs and different power plays is just getting on the same page. Because I mean, Canada has enough skill that it's skill and everything else. They should be as good as anyone in the tournament every single year. So it's how quickly can you bring these guys on the same page and all the systems. And I think that I agree with everything Michael said. I mean, I think that kind of going the old school way with the Hunters is going to be a great addition for Canada. My boy Dave Carl won't be coaching the USA team, so I think that Canada is going to get off to a good start this year.
That's right. The window is opened. David Carl is sequestered in Denver, where he can do no harm to the international field. Yeah, but
right.
We'll put an asterisk next to it if we win. Okay?
That's right.
Exactly. No Dave Carl. No, but I also think
Carl division.
Ryan, the other thing that's super important is a lot of the European teams do play so defensive because they can't really run and gun with the USAs and the Canada. So they'll play 5 guys back in the neutral zone. They'll play super passive in the defensive zone. So that makes your point and the Hunters' point even more significant. I think that if you can't get to the middle of the ice, like it's going to be very hard because these teams are going to play so passive because they have to, because they can't run and gun with some of the bigger countries.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but with Zane Parekh and Gavin McKenna, the Canadian power play should click at about 100%, give or take a couple of percent. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, looking forward to that tournament. Should be a great one. For over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head to thn.com and get in on the action. Now it's time for rapid fire. We're going to keep it international to start this one off. Olympics, they're coming up. So Italy, build an arena. But Finland.
Yeah, maybe.
No, they will not have Aleksander Barkov. Mike, I'll go to you first on this one. Is Finland still a threat to win a medal at the Olympics, even without Barkov in the lineup?
I'm going to say no. Obviously, you can win a bronze, but I think we're more talking about, are they a threat to win gold, or at least be in that gold medal winning game? And I don't think they have the depth. I think losing Barkov is such a big loss for them. And you compound that with the fact that I'm not crazy about their goaltending situation. So I'm going to say no. Like, as much as Mikko Rantanen has just been a total force this season and going back to the last playoffs, it's a tall order. I think Finland is outside the top 4.
Drew, we have seen Finland win world championships and world juniors without the most stars on their lineup. They have that Sisu energy. But do you think on this stage, with the best players in the world, do they have a shot to be those underdogs that surprise?
I agree. I don't think they have enough. I think this kind of has the classic, they're going to upset one of the bigger teams in the quarterfinal game 2-1, be outshot 50-20, and somehow pull off a big upset in the quarterfinal. But I don't see them going much further than that, especially without Barkov.
Fair enough. Okay, here's a fun one. What is the best brother-sister hockey duo you can think of? You can go all-time or current. Mike, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go all-time, and I might be taking Drew's because this one's a good one, okay? Phil Kessel and his sister Amanda Kessel. There was a time where you could argue Amanda Kessel was the more decorated hockey player out of the siblings, but when you add it all up, I think Phil Kessel is a Hall of Famer. Obviously, has won 2 Stanley Cups, and just, he's the Iron Man. Like it or not, he is the Iron Man. And I think Amanda Kessel, when you look at what she's done for Team USA, it's equally impressive. So yeah, I'm gonna say the Kessel siblings there.
There you go, Drew. Who you got?
He took mine.
I
Gosh, that was the first thing that came to my head. I'm trying to think who some of the other ones out there are. But yeah, that was literally like
the one that came to my mind. Also American, Tony and Cami Granato.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Yep, that's a throwback. But yeah, those are good.
Yeah, and maybe a future one would be Mackie and Maddie Samoskevich.
They're twins, aren't they?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with them. All right. Here's a fun one to finish off here. Connor McDavid and Beckett Seneca both tied the game with under a second left last night. And Cale Makar had one that was like close to the last second as well. So what is your favorite buzzer beater in hockey history? Drew, I'll go to you first on this one.
Ooh. I mean, what was it? Wasn't it the last Olympics? Who scored super late? And then obviously Crosby did what he did in overtime. Was it
Parise?
Was it Parise who scored? Yeah, 2010. How late was, because it was someone scored super late. I think it was.
I remember the US tying it up late. I don't know if it was literally a buzz. That's the thing in hockey, Ryan. Like buzzer beaters don't have the same sort of.
It's not like basketball.
I think the Parise goal was with like 2 minutes left. Like I don't think it was a buzzer beater how Connor David last night in Edmonton.
But still a good one. I appreciate that. Mike, who you got?
So I looked up. I just typed up like best NHL buzzer beaters, and this one came up. Like the Detroit Red Wings had a 21 game consecutive winning streak at home, and Datsyuk scored with like 5 seconds left to extend it to 22 games at home. And boy, oh boy, those were the days when the Detroit Red Wings were just a dominating team. When you think about winning 22 straight games at home, and I have a feeling that Datsyuk and Zetterberg probably did this more than once, where late game heroics, because those guys were just fantastic, and especially with the net empty, and you can't get the puck off those two guys. Like, when it comes to playing keep away hockey, I feel like Datsyuk was probably in a league amongst themselves. So, that's the one that kind of popped up on the old Google.
Right on. The one that came to mind for me, and this was actually pretty recent, the last playoffs, is Cole Perfetti, Game 7 for Winnipeg. I think it was 1.6 seconds left, the tip, to put that game into overtime against the St. Louis Blues, and then obviously Winnipeg won it. I mean, that was one of the most remarkable finishes because the Jets looked dead in the water, and they made that comeback, and that's why you play all 60 minutes. Sometimes you have to play even more. We always play 60 minutes or more here at the Hockey News. That is our show for today. I'd like to thank Michael Traikos and Drew Shore for joining me. I am Ryan Kennedy. Go to thehockeynews.com for all your great hockey information. We know that Logan Cooley didn't win the Art Ross Trophy, so we will see you next time.